Hello, everybody. It's December 29th, 2016, and this is the weekly Backdrop Dev meeting. So every week we get together and we talk about the tasks that are facing Backdrop. And this particular meeting, we have a really shortened agenda because we're focused on the next release of Backdrop 1.6 that comes out in a couple of weeks, January 15th. Per our new policy, we are instituting code freeze on January 1st. So we have some items that need to be finished up in order for us to meet that deadline. Let's see here. Before we get started talking about the progress report, updates from the PMC. The only item that we have here is that we did get new PHP Storm licenses. Although it appears that if you previously received a PHP Storm license and you need to renew it because the old one has expired earlier in December, you can continue to follow the same link that you received initially, and that will get you the new license file, apparently. If that doesn't work, you can always reach out to us, info@backdropcms.org. And we can send you the link, or we can send you the license file if that has any trouble. Thanks again to JetBrains for those perpetual licenses, quite handy. All right, let's talk about Backdrop, the 1.6 release coming up in just a couple of weeks. The highlighting or banner feature for this release is the reference module that we're working on adding to core, which is issue 1301. Mike, do you want to give an update on reference module?
Yeah, I don't see how that's going to happen for this release. I'm slowly working my way through adding tests, but I'm having some issues with that, and no one else has pitched in anything along with that. We have a few outstanding issues in the issue queue for the module that shouldn't be that hard to address. We have a few remaining features which shouldn't be that hard to address, but I don't think we can do it all by however many days, 2 days, 3 days. And then I definitely can't do the stuff that Jen was talking about with the replacing the taxonomy reference field and having an upgrade path from entity reference. So yeah, welcome to input on how we should proceed.
Yeah, a fair assessment. And as I mentioned before, we started the call, Jen is ill. And so that makes things difficult. I've volunteered, but I've not been fulfilling my obligation here on helping with tests. So I still plan on chipping in there as soon as possible, which basically means today and tomorrow and the weekend. But yeah, you're right that it's gonna be tough. We'll see. Yeah, I think at this point, like I can help with testing, and we'll see how far we get on that. It might also. It's been proposed that we leave in like term reference by yourself and others that, because doing the upgrade path is challenging. And so that might be on the table and it might not be. I think we'll need to see how Jen feels about this after, she was unable to work on the upgrade path. So that might change things.
And we can always do an automatic upgrade later. And I mean, there's, like I said, there's basically nothing in the data structure of one of these reference fields other than just like the entity type and ID that it's referencing.
Yep.
And the same thing's the same for taxonomy reference probably. The only thing it has special is the widget for creating that and stuff like that. So we might be able to swap things around later and just do an upgrade path later and maybe have the taxonomy module itself provide a special widget to the reference field or something. So, I mean.
Yeah, I'm also not keen on it that we could do like one thing, like the reference module first, and then do the upgrade path later. I mean,
What?
it is worth acknowledging the fact that we do actually have 2 additional weeks before the release itself comes out, and 1.6 is right now very, very limited in its changes. There's hardly been, anything at all, actually. So the number of bugs that we have to squash in that 2-week period are almost non-existent because everything is pretty much the same. However, as soon as we introduce reference module and some of these other changes, that's what we're going to spend the 2 weeks actually fixing. So it is a possibility.
Well, this is sort of the reason that this is why we came up with the 2-week freeze, is so we wouldn't be trying to jam stuff in right at the end and not have enough testing and time to do the bug fixes and stuff. So we're sort of, you're sort of talking about breaking a rule that we just created for this.
Yep, which is exactly why I'm not keen on it. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's continue cracking on it and talk about it in the issue queue.
Honestly, at this point, I would be fine just like even if this backdrop release is light, like just keeping reference in a contrib module and maybe doing an official contrib module release of it, so people can start using it with their project downloaders and stuff like that. So if we just if you guys want to help me sprint and try to get an official release of reference out, that would be super helpful.
Yep, and I like that idea actually quite a bit. We could even feature it like in the newsletter that goes out talking about 1.6, like that it's made to work together or something like that.
Yeah.
And that could get some momentum behind the contrib version, which could be made part of core as we go forward. Yeah. That's I like that idea. And if there's anything that we need to adjust in core to make, reference module possible, then we can say, it's funny advertising it as a feature, but if 1.6 is required for reference module to work, then that's fine.
Oh, well.
Can I say a couple of things? Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to say that, yes, there are a bunch of issues of things around entity info that the reference module is currently adding, or basically stuff around the core entities need to have additional information put in about their label field and stuff like that. So, I mean, there is stuff that we can add to core, and I have core issues open for. I'm not sure if any of them actually got resolved at all. So we have core issues open for it to work with the entity field. And so basically we can say the new reference field is a super simple, fast module because core provides entity information. We're leveraging entity API a lot more than the other reference fields did.
Yep. Okay. Gregory, what were you going to say?
Yeah, so a couple of things. First of all, the idea that you said that you were talking about reminds me a lot of the way Drupal 8 has these experimental modules that get into core. I think we might have touched on that issue a couple of times, but we said it's not a good idea, but it might seem like this is a perfect chance for it. I'm just saying. And the other thing is, although it saddens me, and unfortunately not enough to help, we've been through that with the WYSIWYG module. I don't mind if we even, I hate having to stress ourselves and members of our community just to get features in. So if this gets pushed even to 1.7, I'm not saying don't try to get it in now, but even if it gets pushed to the next release, I will be just fine, because I hate, I don't want to, Mike has been struggling with it, and for the last 2 weeks I see him stressed. I hate to see that. I wouldn't mind.
Okay. Yeah, great. I totally agree as well. We are a volunteer-driven organization, and we have been doing incredible work with the resources that we have. But with some person like Jen who's worked herself into illness, that's not anything we want to push onto anybody. So let's continue thinking about that and talking about it in the issue queue. I promise, lend a hand there with the testing and try to push that forward. Although I don't think I'm quite ready to table it officially, although I think that we should discuss more about it.
And there's also a to-do list issue, which just has a bunch of things in it. So we have like 10 issues, and one of them is a to-do list with like 30 issues in it. So there's like a bunch of little things like add access checks and stuff, but then there's also like the reverse views relationship, which we still have to figure out. So I mean, there's some meaty chunks in there of features that still need to be built into this before it's like totally ready to replace entity reference.
Okay. Well, let's at the very least just continue developing the contrib module. It is accessible under github.com/backdrop-contrib/reference, and that's where development is happening. And I really like the idea, at least, of making an official release. If it doesn't get in, then at least having a module that people can actually use that is searchable and installable and everything like that. Okay, next feature on the list here is entity view modes, adding the ability to add a custom view mode to any entity type, and that's issue 315. This issue looks really good. There's been a lot. The actual API underlying part is actually really pretty simple, but we've been going back and forth with all of these user interfaces. That making a user interface for this has been somewhat challenging. And so initially we implemented it the same as the contrib module in Drupal 7 or the way Drupal 8 did it, and gave it a top level item under structure for view modes. But it was pointed out that view modes are kind of an advanced topic, and that finding like a centrally managed place for all of your view modes isn't kind of like it doesn't really make much sense to have like view modes for users being right next to nodes. Like people don't say, I want to now configure my view modes and do it all at once. It's much more likely that they go to the type of content, like the node type, like a blog post or slider or whatever it is, and they realize I need another view mode here. And so rather than putting the view mode somewhere else, we've integrated the ability to add a view mode on the place where you would actually want to add a view mode, which is looking really good. It's mostly down to a question of whether or not we want to show the disabled view modes on the display fields page or not. I think it's a question of what our priority is here, whether or not disabled view modes are going to be used frequently enough that we should show them on that page, or whether or not adding a view mode or showing a disabled view mode is not important enough to show on the same page and should be stashed away under the add or customize view mode link. There's mockups. I know it's a little bit, heck, why don't I share my screen? Here we go. 1 second. Here we go. Okay. So here's what we're looking at. This is one version where we only show the view modes that are activated, and then if you want to add or customize one of the disabled view modes, you have to click this link, which then shows you a drop-down select list of all of the possible view modes and an option to add another one. I don't think there's a screenshot of that. And the other option is something like this, where the disabled view modes are always shown on the Manage Displays page with a button over here on the right-hand side to enable or customize it to actually make it actually be used on this particular type of content. Go ahead.
This is the first time I've actually finally taken a look at it. The customized terminology is a bit weird. Like it took me a second to realize what it was. I mean, it makes sense once I realize it, but like enable sort of seems better or something, or yeah, but customize makes sense. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the problem is it's not really disabled. It just goes to the default.
Yeah.
Like you can still use it.
So
It's
yeah.
awkward.
And then, yeah, so is it disabled? Because, like, theoretically, if it is disabled, it shouldn't, like, because there's places, like, with reference, and you're displaying you're doing the rendered entity, and you have to choose which view mode, or if you're doing a view of nodes, and then you have to choose which view mode to choose, would these disable ones show as options? So
yes.
if
That's the weird thing about it, is that you can configure views or reference or whatever it is to use like the full content view mode, even if the full content view mode isn't actually any different or enabled or whatever you want to call it. It'll just fall back to the default. So that's what's confusing about it, is that they're always enabled.
So yeah, so
but not necessarily customized.
So I'd argue against hiding them because they are in play even if they're not customized, and there should be like a list of them. So yeah, so I think this is better than the other one that was hiding it, because you need to know that these exist, because then when you go to select them somewhere else, they show up in the list. Yep,
and so that's exactly the two sides of the coin that we have this problem. I would, as shown here, I favor the other approach, that I prefer to hide them for the reasons that I've stated here. And your point is totally valid as well. I'm not really sure how to resolve this. We're at a point where other people like Doc Wilmot are also saying that as well. So I don't really know what to do. It's not that either approach is really bad. It's really just deciding which one is better, because both are better than what we have currently and what's in Drupal 8. I feel so. It's really, yeah. I'm not quite sure how to resolve it.
What's in the PR now?
The PR right now is the one where they're hidden, where they're in a select list. Yeah, actually, it looks like there's two options here. Actually, I can probably even pull up the sandbox. And
these view modes can be deleted, right?
Some of them can, yeah. Post. Okay. So this is, yeah, I'm sorry. Manage displays. Is that always what that was? Huh. Okay, so here's what it looks like right now. And the reason why I'm a fan of this is that really in most situations, you don't actually need more additional view modes. Like view modes are not, they're kind of an advanced topic. And it really puts the focus on what you actually are interested in, the default view mode and the teaser. And then if you want to add an additional view mode, you choose which one it is, or if you want to add a customized one. So these ones are the hard-coded ones, like full content. And so now that one is now added. But if you want to add a new view mode entirely, like a slideshow or something like that, you give it a label and a machine name, and then this one actually can be deleted. Yeah, you can see the options here. So reset to default means use the default settings again, and delete actually would remove that view mode entirely.
Can I say something there?
Of course.
See how you've added the full content list there? All right. What was the purpose of hiding it? You've added it there now. It's there. You haven't customized it yet. So what's the point of having it there? Say somebody adds it, like what you've just done, but you haven't customized it. So what's the difference between this one, as it is now, non-customized, and the other ones that are hidden?
Well, one difference now is that if I were to change the default view mode at this point, it would not affect full content. Full content is now a copy of what default used to be. And so if I change defaults, like here, like a manage display here is like, okay, well, I think we may have a bug here because there's nothing, it didn't actually copy anything. It just has everything all hidden. So I guess actually this is something different in that the view mode, when I turned it on, it shouldn't do this. It should copy what the default is. And then from then on, if I change the default, the full content stays the same.
Oh yeah, I get it now. Okay.
So
if you bring more, the moment that you bring more in via the add or customize, existing ones, I mean, they copy the default, or they're supposed.
Yep.
Excluding the bug that just happened, they're supposed to copy the default, and then from then on you can just customize it.
Yep.
All right. Fair enough.
just speaking for myself, the whole hidden things where you have to go and into that extra page and select them and stuff like that will drive me crazy. Just that
I don't like it either.
so many extra clicks.
Okay, that's a lot of.
And non-discoverable. Like you don't know what's like if you just want the list of all the possible view modes for a selection, you don't really have like one list. It's like you have to sort of add up all the ones that are enabled and then go look at the ones that are there to see. Yeah, so I mean, if I definitely prefer the second option where everything is just listed, especially since that's the way that things are handled with like disabled views and stuff like that. Yeah. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
That was the argument that Doc Wilbent had as well. That's what he said. Non-discoverability of the existing ones as well.
I'm with Doc.
And
I'm with Doc as well, for the record.
I think there's another factor in that view modes can be a tricky enough concept to wrap your head around, that unless you know what they are, you're looking for as much context as you can to figure out what they are, right? So if most of them are hidden, that's removing information from newcomers to figure out, what it is they're messing with.
Yeah. So one thing that I have concern around, first of all, noted everyone's opinions. So we might end up going that way. But an additional concern I have is that one change that we introduced here is that previously when you went to this page, Manage Displays, you would immediately see this page, the default view mode, with a collapsed field set down at the bottom. And so that made it so that you were on the page that a new user, and actually almost even in my own usage, like this is the page that actually has the stuff that I care about, and it's been put one level deeper under this default option. And so with all of the view modes on the page at the same time, which I'm not sure if there's actually a version of that, something like this, that the default view mode, I mean, it is at the top, but there's a lot of buttons on this page and a lot of links on this page to actually get to the page that I want, which is the default. So I don't know. I've got a concern around, taking the page that's, is the most commonly visited page and putting it a level deeper. But that's a problem with either approach. But I think that there's more going on in this version that a new user might not get to the page that they want, which is the default display.
And so why did we get rid of the tabs?
The tabs, I think it's
Can I say something there?
Yeah.
I had a design there that with vertical tabs. I know that it's wrong from from the design standards point. I know it was wrong, but it was so fitting. Like all the issues we're discussing now, hiding the fields for the default one, having to do a lot of clicks and everything. The vertical tabs just sorted everything out, I think. There is a mock-up, I think, earlier than that I had. But it was the issue of using a UI feature that is not meant to be used as SATs in SATs away, like the vertical tabs.
Yeah,
So
and my thing
yeah.
was we're gonna be redoing the field UI, and that's really the core problem. I feel like is we're just inheriting a lot of awkwardness, and that's
Yeah.
a bigger issue.
Yeah, and that's something that I've been trying to push towards in this issue as well, is that the problem we're trying to solve here is adding custom view modes. Like, that's it. And the less user interface changes we do to accomplish that goal, the better. So, yeah. I also kind of agree about the secondary tabs that that removing them is, yet more changes, but it's a one-line thing to get rid of them. But from a navigation standpoint, I find them to be useful. But the argument is being made that that secondary tabs are a very like uncommon pattern, and even within our own software, like we very, very rarely use secondary tabs. There are places, and this is one of
Uncommon,
them.
meaning totally not recommended and a total violation of tabs.
Right. Yeah. So just the pattern for secondary tabs is both uncommon and little unfriendly. But I don't really know about removing the secondary tabs myself. I don't feel super strongly about it, but I'm also a little bit skeptical about removing them. So.
And it's like we could always remove them later.
Right.
So maybe we could take it one step at a time here. The only thing is with the operations, then we'd end up with a situation like with the Views UI, where we have the secondary tabs for the different view modes, and then like an operations button over to the right or something like that when you're actually looking at the view mode.
Right. And I think that's the thing, is that like for something like managed fields, for example, we don't have a secondary tab of every field, for example. So it makes it so this. So now I've got the breadcrumb going on, but other than that, I'm not, I'm not in a secondary tab anymore. Yeah.
Can you change which view mode is the default view mode?
No, the default view mode, there's always a view mode called default, and it's always the default.
Can we have a tab that's managed display just like it always was, and a separate tab that's managed displays or managed view modes that shows all the view modes that you can do things with? And if you customize one, then it becomes available on managed display?
So are you suggesting that we have another primary tab up here? Is that the idea?
Yes. Yes.
That seems like, so the first one would be the default one, and then another one for other ones?
The first one would be the one that the node is using to render.
Well, they're all being used for the node to render in different circumstances.
He's saying manage display stays as it is, and there's a new tab that handles view modes like creation kind of stuff. I think,
Yeah,
right?
that's very confusing. Crap, where does it? Somewhere does that, and it's very confusing.
Yeah, Doc Wilmot initially had a separate, not within the content type, a separate page that was handling the whole thing. It was one of the designs, but we turned it out. I can't remember why, but it was a totally separate page. I think under structure. So it was not within the primary tabs of the content type itself. It was one of the previous designs.
Yeah. Let's see. So seems like we're kind of, I mean, actually there's some agreement here amongst the people, at least that are on this call, that that we don't like putting them under the add new thing.
Yeah.
So I think it would be most valuable if everyone that has an opinion could post their opinion as it is to the issue queue, so that we get it more than just on this video call, although I can summarize there as well. Because we do need, we just need to figure out how we want this to be displayed as a user interface. And actually apparently enabling not copying from the defaults. There is test coverage that Jen has been adding, but it seems like it's incomplete because it should, account for a situation like that. Okay. Do you guys have more feedback or more discussion that we should have about this?
Sort of one question. Was there discussion about why calling it a view mode as opposed to a display mode?
We have
Yeah.
a separate issue. We have a separate issue for that to decide after.
Okay, because it's under like manage displays, then it makes sense to call them display modes.
Yeah, we separated out into a separate issue specifically because it got messy.
Yeah, because view modes was sort of like making an association with views.
Yeah. So I
That
mean,
was the argument. But yeah, we have a separate issue. I'll find it and I'll post the link.
what was the argument for calling it view modes?
Well, they're already view modes. Is
Okay,
the problem.
yeah,
And
yeah.
And that's what Drupal 8 calls them as well. So if
Okay.
you have people coming from Drupal 8, they won't know it. View modes.
Yeah, and more importantly, there's APIs that call it view modes, so
You're right,
we would
yeah.
end up with a discrepancy there. Yep.
Yep. Inherited Drupal crap.
Yep. Okay. Wow, there's a lot going on there. More than I might have hoped, but yeah. Please.
Point of process. This was actually a good discussion. It almost would make sense if we had like some sort of meetings to discuss these big issues more often.
Yeah. Well, we do have them on a weekly basis, but I think.
But we have so many things on those calls that would just sort of gloss over all the details.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
maybe if we just choose one issue to focus on for that meeting, like a deep dive for each week or something.
That's been the plan, where we talk about it after this meeting, if we want to do that for next week. I don't know how successful it's been, but I think that was the idea we talked about a while back.
Okay. Yeah, we can do exactly that. Although we just talked about this particular issue, so but that is the idea of the follow-ups that we could, in theory, schedule some action to like discuss further after the meeting. So it is a possibility if we need to do that on this topic or another one at the end of the call. All right, the last item here is adding a file view, which is 2375. Gregory, you gave this a review. Thank you very much. Would it be possible for you to give a summary of the status of this pull request?
I don't remember the review. Sorry, just let me see. I don't remember if I did a thorough code review, because usually what I do is I look at the. You're talking about the file, adding the file view, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, all I did was just really just run through, and I'm not sure if I would be. Just let me quickly jump to that issue. I mean, maybe the review is just going through it quickly and just looking at the user interface and the text mainly, and let's see.
Yeah, it looks like.
Oh, I see the thing. Yes. All right.
Yeah, you've got
So there's a lot of things that.
Yeah, you've got some good ideas here. That like we need a confirmation. Well, the confirmation should tell you if a file is in use and link to the places where the file is in use, so that you can see it before you delete it. That's a great idea.
Yeah, and there were some glitches as well. If you delete a file from the, let me see again. If you deleted a file from one of the operation links available as in its row of its file, it would get you a confirmation dialog. But if you did it from the bulk operations, it wouldn't ask you. It would just go ahead and delete every file. So that was one thing. Yeah, that's the second point that I say. So if you click the delete button available in the operations column for each file. It gets you to a confirmation dialog, a page. But if you do it through the bulk operation drop-down menu, it just goes ahead and deletes everything. So that's
got it. Yeah, I think we have a confirmation page for that when we delete nodes. We could adopt the same model there. It actually gives you a little bit more elaborate confirmation.
Yes, and the other thing was that I tried deleting an image file, created an article, and then I went to this view, the file view, and I deleted the image. So I went to view the article again, or actually edit it, and then I uploaded the same file. So I got an error there. The website encountered an unexpected error. And then there were some fatal errors logged in.
Okay, so it sounds like we have a number of issues here. The view itself is working and functioning, but has some improvements that are necessary, plus bugs that need to be worked out. Okay, well.
Yeah, and then some simple stuff like the actual name of the JSON file being file admin. I'm trying to get consistency with the other pages that we're converting to admin views to be managed XYZ. So it should be managed files as a title and a JSON file, just so that people can locate the views easily if they go to their active config folder. And yes, so just a few things, a few corrections in the view here and there. Also the page title of the view, if you have it as managed files, I don't know if this makes sense. I have a screenshot there, but if you open the, can I do that? Can I share my screen? If I open the sandbox of the pull request, just let me see if I can demonstrate what I'm talking about real quick. Sorry about that.
I can share my screen too if you prefer, Gregory.
I don't know how to do mine. How do you do it?
In the left-hand sidebar of the Hangout, there's a drawer that slides out that says screen share. It's the second button.
All right, yep, I got that. Okay, everybody can see it?
Excellent.
All right, oh, got the, sorry, let me get the proper password from. Oh, there's a new website, just hold on a second. So it should be, yep, manage files. So the thing is, if you go to find content, this is, well, it's going to become managed content with one of my pull requests, and also this is going to be managed content as well. And now manage files. So,
yeah.
So this is all under content, so it should be content manage files instead of manage files. Because I have other pull requests that are replacing this with a view, and it's again manage content comments. Content manage comments, and then also this changes to content manage content. So everything is under a title that says content, and then it's manage content, manage comments, manage files.
Yeah. How bizarre that the title of this page is admin content, by the way.
Yes, I have a pull request for it that corrects it. So it's another issue. It's one of the small issues that I'm fixing, all the views and small issues like that.
Excellent.
To change to just the content, and this becomes managed content, and this becomes managed comments, and all these are views.
Excellent. Okay. Great.
How do I stop the screen share now? Okay.
Can we move an entire config file to the active config in an update hook?
You could, but I don't. Oh, You could, but that's it's not a very safe thing to do, because what happens is if you just copied an existing config file, like the one that ships with the module, and just copied it all in, that makes it inconsistent in the future. If we were to change that config file in the future and also have an update hook that changed it, you would end up with like an old site that updated would copy a newer config file than the previous, gosh, this is confusing to explain. It's the same reason why you can't copy, why you can't use hook schema to update a database table, because hook schema might change or the config file might change. And so the future version that gets changed, the update hook will be expecting the old version. And then subsequent update hooks will build upon the old version that might not be the one that got copied in anymore, if that makes some sense. So when it comes to...
If you're upgrading a site, this view doesn't show up. If you install a new site, this view shows up. So we need something to say, hey, there's a new, because the default config doesn't get into active config unless you go through an installation.
Yep. Yeah. So although it's inconvenient, the way that we'll have to do this is we'll take the config JSON and then turn it into an array, and then copy paste the entire array into the update hook, and then save the config file that way. So
I have posted a question about this, by the way, and the way we have two ways of doing it. There were two pull requests that actually did this whole thing, copied the entire JSON file as in a format of an array, and there were another two pull requests. But what they did is they read the JSON file, the config, the default config, stored it in a data object, I would say, and then they did JSON decode on that. I have an issue, just let me find it real quick again. I have an issue for that. And I was asking why the hell we were doing it differently, and it seemed like the update hooks in the two pull requests were like huge code there, just copying over. Just let me find it real quick.
Yeah, but it's similar to any other config file. That's whenever we created a config file, like all of the stuff that was copied out of variables in Drupal 7 and then put into config in Backdrop, or if we created a new module or created a new config file, we never copy the file out of the config directory and just load it into the active config directory for the same reason. So whenever we create a config file, you actually need to code it exactly the way the default config file needs to be in the update hook, and then just say config save. And that makes it so that the starting point is always consistent. So subsequent update hooks that build on modifying that config file will all get the same expected output. While new sites will use the default config file that's in the config directory.
So config save knows to make a brand new file if one doesn't exist.
Yep.
No.
Okay.
Actually, there were pull requests that actually were checking if the config is new. There's a function that says config. Sorry, there was a check if config is new. So sort of it was this code. Sorry, excuse.
Yeah.
This is what happens. Yeah.
Yep. But either way, both of you guys are definitely right that we need an update hook that actually creates this view for existing sites. We do a fair amount of, if you update your site from an old version of Backdrop to a new version of Backdrop, that the new functionality is there, but it's not turned on. But this is a situation that's, I feel like it should definitely be there just as a matter of updating your site from one version to the other. Because this isn't modifying the way things work or adding a new feature to an existing system that would change its behavior. This is a standalone thing that is entirely by itself.
Also, another thing that I wanted to ask, I checked what happens, but See, we were replacing those legacy 777 pages with views, but we allow these views to be disabled. So if you disable the manage content or admin content view, then people lose the entire menu of find content.
That is true.
I don't know if this is desired, because people might actually want to replace the view that we have with their own. But I don't know, it's a little bit of allowing beginners to shoot themselves in the foot. I'm just saying.
Yep. Yep, that is the case, and I agree. But let's make a new issue probably for that discussion. Yeah. Okay. That's it. Those are the three main items for 1.6. It's funny, I was feeling really good about the latter two, Entity View Modes and File View, but now after talking about them, I'm feeling a little less confident even about them. But we have a couple of days to get them into a committable state, and then a couple of weeks to actually do follow-ups to fix any bugs that we've accidentally introduced. So we've got some work to do. We've only got today, let's see, 3 days to actually polish these things up, and any other issues that are tagged for the 1.6 release. So I'd say we should put our focus on the Entity View Modes and the File View, which seem like they both have small bugs and upgrading issues and testing issues. So that's where our focus should be for the next couple of days, and we'll see where we are by next week. We will be in Feature Freeze, and we'll discuss the things that we need to do to actually prepare for prepare for the release next week. That's it. Anybody else? Do you guys have anything that you would like to add? Okay. Anything that we should talk about next week that we would like to add to the agenda? Yeah, not really. I think sticking with our focused agendas up until the release is a good idea. So, okay, that's it. Thank you everybody for watching. Thank you everybody for joining. We'll see you guys in Gitter and in the issue queue, and let's keep cracking. All right, bye everybody.